Boys will be boys. Mom smiled, her voice dripping with dismissal as I clutched my throbbing hand against my chest. Marcus had just slammed it in the door, grinning as he heard the crack. "Stop being so dramatic, Thomas. Your brother is just playing." My name is Thomas Chen, and at 17, I was sitting in our living room trying not to vomit from the pain while my parents watched their favorite son torment me for the 100th time. The difference was, this time I could see bone protruding through my skin. "I think it's broken," I managed to say through gritted teeth. "I need to go to the hospital." "Hospital?" Dad scoffed, not even looking up from his newspaper. "What do you need a hospital for?" "Put some ice on it. Marcus didn't mean to hurt you." Marcus, 19 and built like a linebacker, leaned against the doorframe with that familiar smirk. "Yeah, little brother. Don't be such a baby. We were just wrestling." Wrestling. Right, that's what they always called it when Marcus decided to use me as his personal punching bag. Whether it was accidentally shoving me down the stairs, playfully holding my head underwater in the pool until I nearly passed out, or now deliberately crushing my hand in the door, it was always just brothers being brothers. "Mom, please," I pleaded, tears streaming down my face despite my best efforts to hold them back. "I can see the bone." Finally, Mom glanced over, her expression shifting slightly as she noticed the unnatural angle of my fingers and the blood beginning to seep through my sleeve. "Oh dear," she sighed, as if I'd merely spilled something on the carpet. "I suppose we should have it looked at." "Marcus, dear, would you drive your brother to the clinic?" "No," I said too quickly, panic rising in my throat. The last time Marcus drove me anywhere after hurting me, he'd made 2 accidental sudden stops that slammed my already injured body into the dashboard. "I'll call an Uber." "Don't be ridiculous." Dad finally set down his paper. "Your brother offered to drive you. Don't make this more dramatic than it needs to be." I looked at Marcus, at the gleam in his eyes that promised more pain to come, and made a decision. "I'm calling 911. The room went silent. Marcus's smirk vanished. Mom's face paled. Dad stood up so quickly his chair toppled backward. "You will do no such thing," he growled. "We don't need ambulances and police reports. This is a family matter." But I was already dialing with my good hand, backing away toward the front door. Years of Marcus's abuse had taught me to be quick, to always have an escape route. "I need an ambulance," I said clearly into the phone, watching my family's expressions shift from annoyance to anger. My brother broke my hand. I can see bone. Mom lunged for the phone, but I dodged, years of practice making me nimble despite the pain. "He's confused," she called out loudly. "It was an accident. We don't need." "The address is 1542 Oak Street," I continued, my voice steady even as Marcus took a menacing step toward me. "Please hurry. I don't feel safe." Those last words changed everything. Mom stopped trying to grab the phone, her face frozen in horror. Dad's anger morphed into fear. Marcus, for the first time I could remember, looked uncertain. The dispatcher assured me help was on the way and told me to stay on the line. I did, backing out onto the front porch where neighbors could see me. My family followed but kept their distance, suddenly aware of the eyes watching from nearby houses. "Thomas," Mom's voice was honey-sweet now, the way it got when she was trying to manage a situation. "Sweetheart, you're overreacting. We can drive you to the doctor. There's no need for all this fuss." But I could hear the sirens approaching, and for the first time in years, I felt something other than fear and resignation. I felt powerful. The ambulance arrived first, followed closely by a police car. The paramedics took one look at my hand and immediately began treatment. The officer started asking questions, and that's when I saw real fear in my parents' eyes. "It was an accident," Mom repeated, but her voice wavered. "Boys playing. You know how brothers are." The paramedic gently wrapped my hand, his expression grim. "This isn't from playing," he said quietly. "This was done with significant force." As they loaded me into the ambulance, I heard the officer asking Marcus to explain exactly how my hand ended up in the door. For once, my brother had no smooth answer, no easy lie to tell. "We'll meet you at the hospital," Mom called out, her voice tinged with desperation. But the paramedic was already closing the ambulance doors, and for the first time in my life, I was beyond their reach. What I didn't know then was that this was just the beginning. The ER doctor would take one look at my x-rays, review my medical history, and make a phone call that would shatter my family's carefully constructed facade forever. The emergency room buzzed with activity, but Dr. Sarah Miller's focus was entirely on my x-rays, her expression growing darker with each image she examined. She'd been quiet for several minutes, occasionally glancing between the scans and my medical file with increasing concern. "Thomas," she said finally, her voice gentle but firm, "I need you to be honest with me. These x-rays show multiple healed fractures. Your medical history notes frequent accidents, 6 in the past year alone. This isn't normal." I stared at my bandaged hand, avoiding her eyes. Years of cover stories and excuses bubbled up automatically, but something stopped me. Maybe it was the pain medication making me brave, or maybe I was just tired of lying. "My brother," I said quietly. "Marcus likes to hurt me. Has since we were kids." Dr. Miller nodded as if confirming something she'd already suspected. "And your parents?" "They say he's just playing, that I'm too sensitive, that it's normal brother stuff." The words felt bitter in my mouth. She pulled up more images on her screen. "Thomas, look at this." She pointed to various spots on the x-rays. "These are defensive fractures. These are impact injuries. And this," she indicated my current injury, "this was done with deliberate force. None of this is normal brother stuff." Before she could say more, I heard my mother's voice in the hallway, that familiar sugary tone she used when trying to charm authority figures. "We're his parents. Of course we can see him. It was just a little accident." Dr. Miller's expression hardened. "Excuse me for a moment," she said, stepping out into the hallway and closing the door behind her. Through the window, I could see her confronting my parents, her body language firm as she blocked their entry. "I've contacted Child Protective Services," I heard her say clearly. "Given the pattern of injuries and Thomas's statement, I'm legally obligated to report this." "CPS," my mother's voice rose sharply. "This is ridiculous. We're good parents. Tell her, Thomas." But Dr. Miller didn't move from the doorway. "Mr. and Mrs. Chen, your son has multiple documented injuries consistent with ongoing physical abuse. Until CPS arrives and evaluates the situation, I cannot allow you unsupervised contact." "This is outrageous," my father's voice boomed. "We'll have your license for this." "Go ahead," Dr. Miller replied calmly. "File a complaint. But first, explain to me why your 17-year-old son has more healed fractures than most elderly trauma patients." The silence that followed was deafening. "Where's Marcus?" I asked suddenly, realizing my brother wasn't with them. "The police are questioning him," Mom said, her voice shaking. "Thomas, please tell them this is all a misunderstanding. Your brother loves you. We love you." But Dr. Miller had already pulled out her phone, showing them something that made both my parents step back. "These are progression photos of Thomas's injuries over the past year. The pattern is clear. The only misunderstanding here is your belief that this could continue without consequences." A new voice joined the conversation. Firm, professional, introducing herself as Andrea Torres from CPS. I watched through the window as my parents' faces cycled through emotions. Anger, fear, finally settling on desperate pleading. "We didn't know," Mom insisted. "We thought they were just playing. Boys roughhouse, it's normal." "Mrs. Chen," Miss Torres's voice was steel wrapped in silk. "There's nothing normal about multiple fractures, concussions, and what appears to be systematic torture disguised as sibling rivalry. We'll need to discuss temporary placement for Thomas's safety." "Placement?" Dad's voice cracked. "You can't take our son." "You lost that argument when you watched your older son break his brother's hand and did nothing," Dr. Miller interjected. "Thomas needs a safe environment to heal." As if to emphasize her point, a police officer appeared in the hallway, his expression grim. "We've finished questioning Marcus Chen. Given the evidence and witness statements, we're placing him under arrest for assault and battery." My mother's wail echoed through the hallway. My father started arguing loudly about family loyalty and misunderstandings. But through it all, I felt strangely calm. For the first time in years, someone was seeing the truth, not just about my injuries, but about the family dynamic that had allowed them to happen. Dr. Miller returned to my room, closing the door on my parents' protests. "Thomas," she said gently, "I know this is overwhelming, but you're safe now. We're going to make sure you stay that way." I looked at my bandaged hand, then at the x-rays showing years of hidden abuse. "What happens now?" "Now," she said with a small smile, "you heal. Both your hand and everything else they've broken. And this time, nobody gets to tell you it doesn't hurt." Through the window, I could see my parents being escorted away, my mother in tears, my father's face red with rage. But for once, their emotions weren't my responsibility. For once, I didn't have to pretend everything was fine. Dr. Miller handed me a tissue, and I realized I was crying, not from pain or fear, but from relief. Someone had finally seen through the facade of our perfect family, and they weren't looking away. 6 months after that night in the emergency room, I stood in front of the courthouse, my newly healed hand clutching a folder of medical records. Marcus's trial was about to begin, and for the first time, I would tell my story publicly. Living with my Aunt Claire in the months following the incident had shown me what a real family should feel like. No walking on eggshells, no constant fear, no dismissing injuries as just playing. She'd helped me find a therapist, supported my decision to press charges, and most importantly, believed me. "You ready?" Aunt Claire asked, squeezing my shoulder gently. Behind us, Dr. Miller stood with Ms. Torres from CBS, both women having become unexpected allies in my journey to justice. "Ready?" I nodded, straightening my tie. The past months had changed me. I'd grown taller, stronger, more confident. Regular meals without stress and nights without fear had done wonders for my health. Inside the courtroom, I saw my parents sitting behind Marcus. Mom was dabbing her eyes with a tissue, playing the role of the distraught mother perfectly. Dad sat rigid, his jaw clenched. Marcus, in his carefully pressed suit, looked nothing like the brother who had terrorized me for years. When I took the stand, their lawyer tried to paint it all as normal sibling rivalry gone wrong. "Isn't it true that brothers often roughhouse?" he asked, his tone condescending. I met his gaze steadily. "Roughhousing doesn't result in multiple fractures, sir. Roughhousing doesn't send someone to the emergency room repeatedly. What my brother did was calculated abuse, and my parents enabled it." The prosecutor presented my medical records, x-rays displaying years of injuries. Dr. Miller testified about the pattern she discovered, how the injuries were consistent with deliberate harm rather than accidents. School nurses testified about suspicious bruises, teachers about my flinching when Marcus came near. Then came the security footage from neighbors' cameras, showing instances of Marcus's playing that my parents had ignored. The jury watched in silence as video after video showed clear abuse, my parents visible in the background, doing nothing. Marcus's lawyer tried one last angle. "Your brother was just trying to toughen you up, wasn't he? Prepare you for the real world." I leaned into the microphone, my voice clear and strong. "The real world has laws against assault. The real world has consequences for hurting people. My brother didn't prepare me for anything except how to survive abuse." The verdict came back quickly, guilty on all counts. Marcus's face finally showed something other than smugness. Fear. As they led him away, my mother broke down sobbing. My father wouldn't look at me. But I wasn't done. Outside the courthouse, surrounded by reporters, I made an announcement that would change everything. "Today isn't just about my brother's actions," I said, Aunt Claire's supportive hand on my shoulder. "It's about breaking the cycle of abuse that families hide behind words like boys will be boys and sibling rivalry. That's why I'm starting a foundation to help other teenagers trapped in abusive family situations." Dr. Miller stepped forward. "The medical community often misses these cases because families are so good at hiding them. Thomas's foundation will help train doctors to recognize patterns of sibling abuse and provide resources for victims." The reporters' cameras flashed as Ms. Torres announced that CPS would be partnering with the foundation to develop new protocols for identifying and handling cases of sibling abuse. My story was becoming something bigger than myself. 1 year later, I stood at a podium, addressing a room full of medical professionals, social workers, and abuse survivors. My foundation had already helped dozens of teenagers escape similar situations, and our training program was being implemented in hospitals across the state. Marcus was serving his sentence. My parents had lost custody of me, and I was thriving under Aunt Claire's guardianship. The nightmares had mostly stopped, and I no longer flinched at sudden movements. Sometimes, I told the audience, the bravest thing we can do is admit that what's happening isn't normal, isn't okay, and isn't our fault. Sometimes we have to break family silence to save ourselves. After the speech, Dr. Miller approached me with a smile. "Remember that scared kid in my ER? Look at you now." I smiled back, touching the small scar on my hand, a reminder of the night everything changed. Thank you for being the first person to really see what was happening. No, she said firmly. Thank you for being brave enough to speak up. You've helped create a system that will protect others like you. As I drove home with Aunt Claire that evening, I thought about how far I'd come from that night when I finally called 911. My brother had broken my hand, but he hadn't broken my spirit. My parents had tried to silence me, but they'd only given me a louder voice. The Foundation's hotline rang constantly now, each call a chance to help another teenager realize that family loyalty shouldn't mean accepting abuse. Each success story was a reminder that sometimes the worst moments in our lives can lead to the most meaningful changes. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving and helping others do the same. And that